Welcome back to part 3. So we're going to take a look at how we can add the car within the showroom, and we're going to see how we can add some interactions using the hover button within SteamVR. So if I will play the simulation for this, we're going to have the following. So I added the car over here, and as you can see, we're going to have the following button. So this will be open door. If I'm going to move the button over here until those two will collide, we're going to see the animation. We are also going to change the material. For example, over here I added a glass material. And if I want to close that door, we're going to have the following button, which will close the door. But again, we need to make sure that the button press will be done. In this case, SteamVR will also have the following flower being spawned. That means if we have that button press, that flower will appear. Over here for the open, I disabled that. But over here for the close button, I left that enabled. And we're going to see how that will work. We're also going to take a look over here at how we can add a video. So in this case, I extracted an MP4 from YouTube.
Dude, what are you doing? What are you pacing for?
Psyching up, man.
Is this the get-in
I
helmet?
don't trust these doors.
You don't need the get-in helmet. This is for the i8. That's a weird car. This is an SLS. It's the Mercedes. It's easy. You can
As you can see, I also added a pause video. We can also add additional interactions with the video. So this is only for play and pause, but we're going to see that we have a list with multiple options over there. And over here, I also added another animation. So this will be for the disassemble, let's say the exploded view. If I will press that, we're going to see the following animation. We see over here that since the shader for everything that's made from surface will look weird, we can change this either by using a different shader, a double shaded material, or we can add a little bit of solidify within Blender. That will also fix this. And I also added over here an assemble, and we're gonna have the components going back. It's the same problem as with this plane. If you recall from my previous video, if I will add the camera within this location, we see that the ground plane will not be visible since the normals are only oriented upwards. But as soon as I'm going to move a little bit above that plane, we're going to have that visibility enabled for that. It's the same over here. If I will move the camera underneath everything, since we only have a plane on the bottom, that will not be visible. We can easily change that within Blender. For example, over here for this interior rim, this doesn't have any thickness. So if I will just go to modify, add over here a solidify, even if I will leave this to 0.01 millimeters, it's not visible within the viewport, but now this will be visible on both sides. Since it's no longer just a surface, it will also have a small mesh applied over here. But I also need to have that applied, and afterwards we're gonna have that additional geometry added. Now, let's see how we're gonna proceed. I will save this and I will open the other project where we remain within the final video, within part 2. We see over here an error from SteamVR since I don't have that headset connected. So let's open the project where we finish the last video for part 2. And over here, we're gonna import the car and we're gonna define some animations. So I'm gonna reset the scene. Within the default scene, I will select all of those camera, cube, and light, and I will delete those. And I will import the car model. The car model is an FBX file format. It will be available over here within VR Showroom files. SLS AMG, this will be the model. I will have it imported. And as you can see, we're gonna have some parenting between the components. We have those lines over here as well. And the first thing that we're gonna do is clear those. I will just enable screencast keys so you can better see what I'm pressing. So in order to clear those, I'm gonna select everything and I will go to Object, Parent. The hotkey would be Alt-P in this case. and this will be clear and keep transformation. And if I'm gonna press Alt and P, you're gonna see that those dotted lines will disappear. So Alt and P, we want to keep the transformation, so the current position of all the components. And over here within the collection, we see that all the meshes are no longer under that, let's say, subassembly. They will all be individual over here. Now, if I will select, for example, the chassis of the car, if I will press G to grab it, I will see that everything will be within the same part. So we need to split everything to be individual. So with this selected, if I'm going to press tab, this will go to edit mode. Everything is also selected under that part, but I can also press A and that will select everything from that part. I can press P for separate and I will choose loose parts. You're going to see how this will separate the selected geometry into multiple meshes. If I'm going to press tab, this will leave edit mode. You can also do it over here at the top. And now if I will select the door, I will move that individually. If I will select over here, for example, the lights, we're going to see that both on the mirrors over here on the back, they will be linked together because we only splitted everything associated with the chassis. So in order to split all the meshes, I will do a large selection to select everything, or I can press A and that will select everything within the scene. And afterwards, I will press tab to go to edit mode. And I will press A again and that will select everything in this case. And I will press P and I will separate this by loose parts. For this case study, I'm also going to go back to object mode. And if you want to animate, for example, the hood of the car, you're going to see that in this case, we have the following rotation. So around that point, if I press R and Y, this will be the axis. If I will press Z, this will be the axis. So we're actually going to need to animate it along this axis. But keep in mind that you're going to need to link all of those individual elements. Since the model is quite detailed, we see over here many ornaments. I'm going to proceed with the door animation, but you can follow along and do for other components the same workflow. So this will be the door. If I will press R for rotation, Z for the axis, will be this axis, X the following, and Y. So we actually see that we need to open this around the Y-axis. The only problem is that it will rotate according to that pivot point, so that small orange dot. We need to adjust the position of that, and for this car, that should be somewhere over here in the middle. So if you're going to hold down Shift and right-click with the object selected, in this case a door, we're going to define the pivot point rotation somewhere over here. You can also maybe move it a little bit closer to that edge. And with that selection done, we see the 3D cursor over there. We're going to go to Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor. And as soon as I'm going to click on this, that small orange dot will jump within that location. If I'm going to press R for rotation, Y for the axis, we're going to see how the door will now open over here. I'm going to zoom in to see exactly, I see that I don't have any collisions, so I can leave it like this. After you verify that this will rotate accordingly, you can press Ctrl Z to go back within the initial rotation state over here. And now, let's say that I want to add the mirror. I could go ahead and select all of those components while holding down Shift. I can press G to verify the selection. And I'm going to see that there are many components within the interior of the mirror. So the best solution would be to enable over here X-ray, and this will allow to select through items. If I will do a rectangle selection, this will select everything over here, and as you can see, it also selected additional elements. And if I will hold down Control and I will do some rectangle selections, it's important that those selections will intersect elements, and those will be removed. And as you can see, I will slowly move around the model, and now I see that only the elements associated with the mirrors have been selected. You can also disable X-ray mode. If I'm going to press G in order to verify the selection, you're going to see that only this will be selected. Therefore, we need to link this to the door because we are going to animate the door. So to do that, we're going to define a child-parent relation. So the mirror will become a child to the parent, which will be the door. Therefore, I will hold down Shift, select the door, and now I need to define that by pressing Ctrl P. I will set parent to object, and I want to keep the transform over here. And I can verify if it works as intended. I will select the door, press R for rotation, Y for the axis, and as you can see, now that door will follow along. And we need to add additional elements. For example, I need to add over here this window. So hold down Shift, select the door, Ctrl P, keep transform, and now we're gonna see that will go along as well. We now have a problem that all the elements within the interior of the car will not follow, so we need to link those as well. Therefore, I will select the window and I will press H, that will hide it. And now I can go within the car. If I want to change the pivot point, for example, I can select this component on steering wheel. I'm gonna press comma on the numpad. If you don't have a numpad, I would recommend that you're gonna use an emulator because this will help you. Because comma will fit to select it. Now if I'm gonna rotate, I will actually rotate around the middle pivot point of this component. So it's a lot easier to navigate over here on the interior. Now I will do a selection. In this case, I want to select those components, and using the same workflow, holding down Control, I'm gonna do some rectangle selection to remove the other components. And over here, I don't want that component, those in the front, to be merged with the door. I also don't want the steering wheel to follow the door, so I will remove that as well. And I can verify what actually will move. So we see over here, I still have that from the dash. We don't need that. That will also not be needed. And this will be the components that will follow the door in this case. When we are happy with this, over here, for example, I also don't want that one. Now, the model was not intended to be animated, and it will only be the exterior and interior of the car. And when we're going to open this, it will not look that good, but this will be the functionality to work with this. We can also leave over here the mirror that has already been assigned previously, so it shouldn't be any problem. What is important now is to deselect the door and have it reselected, because the parenting will always make the parent to be the last selection. Therefore, I will hold down Shift, I will deselect the door, and I will have it reselected. And now Blender knows that this will be the last selection. We see that it will be a different shade of orange. This will be a little bit more reddish, that will be more orange. And I can press Ctrl P and I can set parent to object keep transform. And I can verify if this will open around the y-axis. And as you can see, all of those components will go ahead and move accordingly. We can also define the first animation. So I'm gonna further extend over here the animation, so the editor, and I will use Auto King in this case, so click on this one. I'm currently on frame 1, so I'm gonna keep my mouse within the viewport. I'm gonna press R for rotation, and Blender will add a keyframe over there. And let's say that we want this door to open in let's say 3 seconds. I will go to frame 90, and at a frame rate of 30 frames per second, this will match 3 seconds. And I will hit R for rotation, Y for the angle, for the axis. And we're going to see over here in the top left corner the actual value that we are going to reach. I can move this with the mouse, but I can also add a numeric value. So from the numpad, I will type in -85. And this will be the final position when the door will be opened. I can now disable Auto King and I can check the animation. If I press space, we're going to see that the animation will be the following. Now it's not mandatory to unhide the window, but I'm going to press Alt and H in order to have it unhidden. And we can now export this. Now, just like we did with the showroom, I would recommend that you go ahead and texture this. You can do that as well directly within Unity, but the same principle will apply. You will not have access to those complex unwrapping. So keep that in mind if you want maybe to add some stickers to the car, maybe you wanna make this as a racing car. It will be better to have the model over here textured within Blender and afterwards transferred towards Unity. So let's move the model. I will select over here. Since I deleted the camera and everything, I can also press A and that will select everything. I will go to File, Export, and the file format will be FBX. I'm gonna call this, let's say, car open door. And over here, I want to limit the selection to the selected objects. If you also texture this, keep in mind that you will need to copy and embed those textures. In my case, I didn't do that, so it's not important. But what is important is regarding the animation. So over here, if you're gonna scroll down, you're gonna see the animation. And we're gonna uncheck, in this case, key all bones, since we didn't use bones to animate this. I'm also gonna disable this, so the strips. Blender can also prepare the individual animation for each component, but in this case, I will just leave everything as a single animation. So I will uncheck all of those. With various settings over here, you will have the animation exported individually. And you can then filter and check those over there within Unity. So this will be the model, car open door on desktop. Let me just save it over here within the showroom. So I have exported that. And I will jump towards the Unity scene. So this is where we ended up during our last video. So let's import that car. I will go within the 3D models. I will right click and I will import a new asset. In this case, I want this to be from the showroom folder. It should be on my desktop. Let me just cycle between those with S. So this one, VR showroom files. And I will select the car open door. You see the FBX, in this case, the file size. I will hit import. If you also have this textured, you will need to extract the texture like we did in showroom, extract the materials, and this will be the model. I can drag and drop it within the scene. As you can see over here, I cannot position it over here because I didn't add collisions, but over here, since I added collisions for this cylinder, I can directly fit it over here. You can always move it afterwards, but if you add those collisions, it will automatically identify that sitting position. So this will be the model of the car. We can also decide the rotation. I will leave it, let's say, maybe somewhere like this. And if I will expand that FBX, we're gonna see all of those individual meshes over here at the front. And if I'm gonna scroll down all the way to the back, there are many components. So we need to scroll down, not right all the way to the end. So somewhere over here, the final element will be the animation. In this case, this will be the animation. We see the name, the default one is called scene. If I'm gonna rotate over here within the viewport with a right click, I can also visualize the animation. And we see how that door will open. We only need the door to be open because we can make the close animation by creating a reverse animation of that. So this is the animation. Now, in order to apply it to the car, and we could also select over here the car, we can add a component, and we can add over here an animation directly. But if you want to control the animation using, for example, a button from SteamVR, we're going to need, in this case, to define an animator for this. And the first element within the animator component will be a controller. So we also need to define a controller. To do that, I will right click over here. I will create. Within animation, we're going to find animator controller. We can give it a name. So this will be open door. I'm going to double click this. This will open the animator window. So over here at the top, we have the scene, we have the game, and we have the animator scene. Now I could drag and drop this over here, but the main problem is that the first element added will be automatically linked to entry. So this entry means that that animation will be played within the first frame of the scene. So I'm gonna delete that, and starting from the entry, I will right click, create new state, empty. I can also give this a name, let's say idle, because I don't want anything to happen. So this will be the default one. And afterwards, this is the animation for the open door. I'm gonna drag and drop it twice because I need two of those. And now I can add some names over here. Let's say, for example, that I'm gonna call this one open. It's important if you're gonna use capital O over here or not. When you're gonna call for that string name, you will have to match it. So I will go with no caps, so open, and the other one will be close. And for the close one, I want the speed to be -1. That will actually mean reverse animation. And since these two are added within the animator, we can call for those directly within Unity. So this is everything that we need to set up. We have the open with speed 1. We have close with -1. We can go back to the scene. And let me just add an additional light over here because it's quite dark. So let's say that I want this spotlight to be over here, or I want this to be a point light in order to add additional light within the scene so we can better visualize this. Now, if I will select the car, we know that we added this animator and we need to define the controller. So this is the controller. I will drag and drop this. And in this case, we have those links defined. But now we need to have an interaction with this in order to call for those animations. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this hover button. You're going to find it over here underneath hover button. You can filter it over here by typing in hover, and you're going to see this hover button. You can select it. And with that selection done, you can press Ctrl C and Ctrl V. That will create a new hover button right after the other one. It will have a 1. I'm going to press W in order to enable translation, and I will move this to the showroom. So let's have this position somewhere close to the car where we can interact with it easily, and we can also visualize what's happening. So you can also rotate it. For example, over here, I will go with -90. And I want this to be added somewhere in front of the car. If you by mistake deselected that, you can always search it over here. So this will be hover button tool. You can disable the selection filter, and you can now have this position. If you're going to hold down Control, this will snap to various points, but in this case, it will not snap to that plane. So you will need to search for that. I'm going to Control C and Control V this, and I will move it over here. And over here, we have a text that we can use in order to specify what exactly happens over here. So if you're going to double click, you're going to see the text within this rectangle. Let's just call this closed door, and this one open door. So this is just visually, nothing happens. And afterwards, we're going to have this button. If you're going to expand within the inspector, we see that this will have a box collider, and the animation will trigger as soon as the top box will collide with the bottom base over here. This is how the script is created with SteamVR. This will be the hover button, and we have over here on button down. That means when this button is pressed and it will collide with that, we gonna need to add the animation. So to do that, we need to select the 3D model. In this case, for me, this will be the car open, the one that we transfer from Blender. I will drag and drop this, and I will add it over here on button down. And after we move this, we can then go over here, and within animator, we can play a string. Since I named those using string, we're gonna call over here a play animation based on that string variable. And I will type in over here open, again without capital because I didn't use capital words within that one. And for the close, the same workflow. I will again select the car, which is this one, drag and drop it over here, and for the animator, play string, and I will name this close. We can now simulate the scene, and we can see that interaction. If it works, it should work. So we have the open door. If I will move the button down, we're gonna see that door, the one on the left, as we sit within the car, will open, and this will be the closed door. We don't have any collisions, so we can enter the car, but we're gonna see that the default materials will not have that transparency. If I'm gonna press now the close button, nothing will happen. This is that flower spawn that is added within SteamVR, so we have a visual notification that this was started. Over here we have that video that has still remain automatically, and this will be open. Again, if I will press this multiple times, nothing will happen, only it will be triggered once. If you want to disable that flower spawning point, you can select it over here within the hover button. This will be that one. So we have this flower point. You can disable it over here. Also, you can change it with a different prefab mesh if you want something else to spawn. Now, if I will press this button, it will no longer trigger that, but for the close button, this will trigger since I didn't have that disabled. Now, let's see how we can address this texture over here. I will double click until I will select this window, and we're gonna say this material will be the following as the same onto the car. So since I didn't apply any material within Blender, this just receive an empty material entitled lit in this case. I will create a new material. So right click, material, I will call this glass. And I can drag and drop this and add it over here. And we're gonna see that this will change the color to white. We can expand over here the surface input, and we're gonna have over here at the bottom, this will be the transparency. As you can see, I changed that, but this is still not visible. This is because we also need to change over here the surface type. In this case, this is set to opaque. I can change it to transparent. And we're gonna see how that will update over here. And with the blending mode set to alpha, this will be the following output. And you can apply the same glass material to all of those elements. If you want to give this a tint, you can do that. For example, I can tint it a little bit like this, make it less opaque, but in reality, this should be white. Let's say that maybe we want to tint this a little bit to a blacker color, so we can have this a little bit tinted. The same over here, I can apply it. You can create a new material for the lights. Let's say new material, stop lights. I can drag and drop it over here. And for this, I will tint it a little bit red. And I will make this transparent. And let's take a look over here. If I will add over here a blending mode additive, that will also enable the visualization of those elements. Over here again, you can create a new material, or you can use the same one. So you can go ahead and make this car have more complex materials. Over here for the interior, you can use the UV mapping to maybe add over here the navigation, over here some additional elements, maybe some leather materials for the chair and so on. Now let's take a look at how we can also define that exploded view animation. If you recall, I created an animation over here for exploded view. So this is how you can animate within Blender that movement on X and Y. In this case, I will just make a simple one where I will just select some components and have them translated on the X. So in order to do a simple exploded view, I can select, for example, this. I will enable the auto keying. I will press G for grabbing, and let's say that all the way up to frame 120, this is 4 seconds. I want this to be translated on X. We see the distance over here in the corner. Maybe I want this to be 0.5 meters. I can go with the following component. I will go again to frame 1, G and enter to define the starting of the animation. All the way over here, I will want this to be at 1 meter. And you can go ahead and do the same for each component, but I would recommend to use constraints like I did within the other video. Let's say 1.2. And this will not render on both sides and is the same with the other elements. For example, over here, if I will open that door, we're going to see that since this is a model made from surfaces, for example, we see it over here, it's not visible, so the exterior will be like this. But if I will take a look at it from the outside, those normals will be inverted. So the same principle will apply over here, just like I show you at the beginning of this video. So in order to fix that, we have the possibility to add solidify. So I can go over here, so not material, modifiers, add modifier, type in solidify. You can maybe change it, let's say 0.03, and afterwards have that applied. And we're going to have additional geometry added, and this will now be visible on both sides. Now, if I want to move this animation, I can do that. If I only want to have this animation, I can delete the one for the door. Since when we're going to export this, we can also go ahead and let's say over here, exploded view. Within the export settings over here, we can also choose over here all actions. And as you can see, this will export each action as a separate FBX. But if you want that exploded view to go for all the elements, we can just export everything within same animation. And if I don't want this animation to be added, I can just delete it for the door. So I can select that point. I can press delete over here as well. And now we're only going to have that exploded view. And if I will have this exported again as an FBX, let's say over here, exploded view, hit export, go back over here. If you want to target the exploded view and everything on the same model, that can be done, but it's a little bit more complicated. So since this video is quite long, I will just go ahead and use a different model. It's actually the same car, but a different model within the scene. We're gonna have this added over here, so exploded view. I'm gonna drag and drop this over here and slightly elevate it since I don't have collisions over there. And if I'm gonna expand this, this will again have an animation at the end of all those meshes. The name will be the same, entitled scenes in this case, which is this one. You can also filter. If you're gonna type in scenes, this is a default name from Blender, and you can check those animations. You can select it, you can play it, and this will be the exploded view. And over here, this will be linked to the exploded view model, as you can see. We can target the same animation onto this one, but it's mandatory that we don't change any pivot points of the model, and then we can do that model retargeting for the animation. So I can apply animation done on different model onto the same one. Now let's prepare over here the one for the exploded view. So I will select this hover button and I will Control C and Control V this over here. I will rotate it minus 90 degrees. In this case, it will be rotated like this. So copy paste that again, move it over here. Let's call this disassemble and this one assemble. And we're gonna create a new animator for this. So I'm gonna create a new animator controller. Let's say exploded view. Within that exploded view, from the entry, I want to make a transition to idle. So create an empty. It's not matter that you're gonna change this to idle because it will just remain like that. And over here, I will type in scene and I'm gonna check the animation, which will be for the second model, exploded view. I'm gonna drag and drop this, and I can give those names. I can also just add A for assemble, D for disassemble, and disassemble should have -1. I can go back to the scene, select that mesh, which is this one, the prefab for the car, add an animator, add the controller over here, which we currently created, this one, exploded view. And now we're gonna need to link those buttons. So for assemble, I will need the model for the exploded view, which will be this one. I'm gonna drag and drop that over here. Animator play in this case will be A. You can go back and as you can see over here, this will say missing game object play. In order to fix this, you will type in a string. In this case, it will be A, and you're gonna see that it will no longer say missing. So even though it's the same model, you need to do that update manually, otherwise it will not work. So this will be D for the disassembly, and we can go ahead and give this a try. If I will go over here, this will be the disassemble button. As you can see, in this case, this will start from that original position. So it actually will be assemble, disassemble. So I will need to either replace those minus and +1, because this will be assemble, or I can change over here the naming of that. But either way will be fine. So let's say that disassemble should be 1, assemble should be -1, and if I will replay this, I will not change the text information. And let's say I want to see the disassemble for this. It will work as intended. And you're gonna see over here, since we added that solidify to the rim, we're no longer gonna have that problem. So keep that in mind if you want to maybe create an exploded view where you're gonna sit over here in the middle, and maybe you're gonna press a button. You can copy that button, move it over here, make it smaller. You're gonna press it, and all of those components of the car will go ahead and explode, enter within an exploded view around the user. So something like this. You can also check this video if you want to do a more controlled exploded view. We see over here we have an object constraint for the x-axis that will mirror those to both sides. And over here I also added one for the z-axis, and I link some of the components over here. And the door is linked to both x and y, and that will give it the following animation. So it will go assemble, disassemble on both axes. And this is how you can create some interesting animations. Feel free to go ahead and make one of those over here. Since this model has quite a lot of details, it will be quite interesting. Also, keep in mind that you can also improve over here the textures, like we did with that one, add additional materials and so on. Now, let's see, regarding the video, we can also control using the same buttons from SteamVR the video within the showroom. So this is set to be play on awake. This is what we did within part O. I will disable this to no longer be play on awake. And I want to import a new video over here, which will be this one. And I will have this replaced. And I want to control that play and pause animation like I showed you previously when I started part 3 for this VR showroom. So I will select the hover button over here, which is this one, and I'm gonna copy and paste it. I'm gonna rotate this, and let's move it over here somewhere close to that video. I'm gonna copy paste again. So this will be, let's say, play video. This will be pause video. And we don't need to define variables like we did with those animations. We can actually add directly that video prefab over here. So in this case, since I added it on a mesh that was existing on the showroom model, I will need to select it. I will say this will be plane 007. Since this has that video applied, I can now link that to the button over here. I will filter over here for plane 007, since I know that had the video added as a to the mesh. I will put it over here, and you're gonna see over here that we also have the possibility to go for video player. So in this case, we can have this pause, we can have this play, we can have it stop, or we can go a step forward if you want to add multiple videos over there. In this case, I will just go and have this as a play, and this will be stop. So the same play will be added over here. The video function will be pause. And we can give this a try if you're gonna start the simulation. So those work as intended as previously, and this will be for the video. I can play the video, and we're gonna have the following video appearing over here. This is also muted because I muted it within the previous video. If you want to unmute it, you can unmute it over here. You can also change the volume, and you can do additional elements with the track of that animation.
Dude, what are you doing? What are you pacing?
Psyching up, man.
Is this the get-in
I
helmet?
don't trust these doors.
You don't need the get-in helmet. This is for the...
And when you want to pause it, you can just click that pause video. You can do the same over here with this plane, or you can maybe create one over here as well. You can also move the desk, so feel free to go ahead and configure this. You can also change the model of the car. I made use of this car since it has quite an interesting door system that will open like this. So this is how you can define animations within Blender and have them exported within Unity. And using SteamVR predefined plugins, we can easily work with those. You can also check those plugins. For example, over here, this will be the hover button. This will be the script. You can click on it, and you can open this within Visual Studio. You're going to see that this was created by Valve, and we're going to have all the informations over here. So we have over here the variables. We have two public variables. Those that will be public over here set, those will also be added within Unity. So in some cases, we can directly work with those. If you want to create your own script, maybe you want this car to be rotated, you can easily do that as well. So within a follow-up video, I'm gonna do some additional animations. Maybe you want this car to be rotated automatically, and we can easily do that with a script without having to animate it within Blender, open it over here, because we can just apply a rotation to the desired axis. We can define a variable for the total amount for the animation to be finished, and we can easily do that with generative AI. Also, within my last video, we're gonna take a look at generative AI in order to make this more customizable, let's say. We're gonna add some generative 3D meshes, and we're also gonna take a look at how we can add a character that we can talk to. And we're gonna do that using Convai plugin. Okay, so this was part 3. Part 4, we integrate those AI elements, so scripting and generative AI 3D model, and also character interaction using Convai plugin. Okay, so I will position a similar video over here on the left side, and you're gonna find the subscribe button to the right. So that's it. Thanks for watching.